Jackie Mitchell. Welcome to the Museum Roadshow, and we are on location for today's show. We are out at the Lake Park Lutheran Cemetery for a cemetery walk. If you're unfamiliar with what a cemetery walk is, it is basically a group of individuals that portray people who are buried in that particular cemetery. So they become that person, they talk about their lives, talk about their history, anything interesting that maybe happened while they were alive or sometimes after they're gone. They're a very family-friendly event, nothing scary. It is really a great way for us in the current modern day to honor those from the past from around our county. The Becker County Museum hosts several cemetery walks. We've had 2 this year, and we have 2 more on slate for next summer in 2019. So watch for those, and I invite you to get involved. If you'd like to portray a character, or if you have a cemetery you would like us to feature, you can contact us at the museum at 218-847-2938. Thank you for joining us today for the Museum Roadshow.
Hi, I'm Julia Amdahl. I was born January 16th of 1887. My parents' names were Anna and Schwan Sievertson. I was born in a log home in Cormorant Township. Both of my parents came from Norway. I went to country school, and in 8th grade, I went to Pelican Rapids. I then went to Moorhead for normal school. During that time, my dad would take me back and forth, and he would help sell butter that my mother had made to help pay for my tuition. I was able to do very well when I went to normal school, so much that I got to graduate early. I passed my teacher's exams, and soon the superintendent of District 10 school wanted to offer me a job. I took that position and began teaching in that country school. Over the years, I taught in several different country schools. The last school that I actually taught in was the Lake Park Children's Home. Over the course of years, my pay each month was about $35, $9 of that going towards my room and board. When I was able to get a job at the Lake Park Children's Home, I liked that position because they paid better and the terms were longer. Back then, the school terms were about 3 months in the spring and 3 months in the fall. During my times when I was off of teaching, I worked at a store here in Lake Park called the Farmer's Store. During that time, there was a traveling salesman that would come into the store by the name of John Amdahl. I got to know him, and we began to date. Over the years, I worked in a couple other stores, Wagenstein's store, and then actually a store in Frazee. But I continued to date John during that time. In 1915, John and I were married. We moved to Becker, Minnesota for his job, and then to Cambridge, Minnesota. During the time that we were in Cambridge and Becker, our children were born. We had a total of 3 children, John, Martha, and James. John was then asked to come back to Lake Park and be the manager of the mercantile store. So we moved back to Lake Park in 1923. And from then on, Lake Park was our home. I was a very active participator in the community of Lake Park. I was active in the auxiliary, the garden club. We were members of the Lake Park Lutheran Church, and I was the first president of the Lake Park Parent Teachers Association. Education was very important to me, and I was a coordinator in making sure that parents and teachers and the community were aware of the education needs in the town.
I am Ernest. I've lived here my entire life. Lake Park is such a beautiful area. When duty called, though, I did go into World War I, where I served with the U.S. Army Air Corps until I was discharged. After the war, I came back to Lake Park, attended business college, and married the love of my life, Esther, on June 22nd of 1922. Together we had 4 wonderful children, 2 boys, Jerome and Richard, and 2 girls, Virginia and Rachel. And you say my last name sounds familiar. Well, it might be because for many years I, along with my two brothers, Carl and Leonard, ran the Jordahl store. It was our father, Ed Jordahl, who founded the store. It's said to be the longest running business in Lake Park. Of course, neither of my brothers nor I are still in business. We sold the business in 1963 to Dwayne Hansen, and my granddaughter, Cheryl Erleen, Mrs. Gerald Erleen, took up the business for a number of years.
Hi, my name is Guri Adamson, and I am the mother to Stingram Jellum. Stingram wrote a letter to myself and his father in Norway after he had been in America for 5 months and told us about how the trip went, and told us that we were too old to make the trip and someone our age will just get sick and possibly die after being here. So he warned against it, but he told about how it was so great to be here, that the horses were taller and bigger, and that if you didn't have much in Norway, that America is a great place to be. So I decided at that point not to come to America, but when I was 75 years old, I decided to make the journey to America. And when I got here, I came to live with Stingram, and I did really well here, and I enjoyed living in America.
Hi, I'm Josephine Berg. My husband, Ole Ivar Berg, and myself were married in Norway. We were both servants at a parsonage in Norway, and 2 weeks after we were married, we decided to come to America. So we got on a ship in Oslo and took the 13-week journey and landed in Quebec. From Quebec, we took boat and train and went down by Ohio, were relatives of ours that we knew, and stayed with them for several years. Ole working as a blacksmith and a carpenter. And then we heard about the Red River Valley, and we thought that we would try to come north and see what we could find for ourselves and settle. So we got in a wagon train. There was 8 wagons in our wagon train, and we headed out in May of 1871. And my husband made the wagon that we went in, so ours was much plainer than the other ones. The other ones were painted and bought. So my girls, I have 4 girls with, the youngest one being 6 weeks old, the oldest one 11 when we left. They were kind of jealous of the painted ones, but ours never broke down on the whole trip, and some of the other ones did. Although all of us had 2 oxen pulling our wagons, we did have one of our oxen that was sick, and we had to leave, and we found out later that it had died. But somebody had extra that he was training on the way up there, so he let us take one of ours, or one of his. And so we had plenty to pull our wagon. And being oxen pulling the wagon, it was a slow journey. And everybody had also 2 head of cattle, or 2 cows with. So we were herding cows and being driven by oxen, so it was a very slow trip up to Lake Park. And the trip was good, though, and we would stop every Saturday and make camp at noon. That would be our early day, because then us women, we would get out our cook stoves and make bread for the rest of the week and wash clothes. So we would always camp on Saturdays by water and wood so that we could make fires. The journey got much slower when we got to Fergus Falls. After that, the wagon train trail was gone, and it was Indian trail. And there were several times that the men would have to stop and cut branches and reeds and lay them down in the marshes so that our wagons would not fall through. So the journey was very slow from Fergus Falls, and our next big stop was Detroit Lakes. We stopped in Detroit Lakes, and then from there the men went on foot to go find the property that they wanted to settle on. My husband Ole, he went about 10 miles west, and he knew somebody, Hansons, that had come the year before, so he went looking for them, and he found them. And so he came back and got us, and we came 10 miles west, which is we were at Lake Park. It wasn't, we were the first house built in Lake Park. My husband, being a carpenter, built the house, and there were other buildings in town, but no houses. So we had the first house, and then right outside of town there was a log cabin, and that is where the Hansons lived. Our upstairs was finished, and that is where the pastor lived. The city people had gotten together, and they had a pastor come, and he stayed at our house until my husband, who did the design, and some of the other men built the first Lake Park Lutheran Church.